Hi, guys. Welcome. Looks like we are live. And we are so excited to be here tonight. We're going to do introductions here in a few minutes. But before we get started, I thought I would just see where everybody is from tonight. You guys can certainly start posting questions if you'd like in the chat, but those of you that are joining us, if you want to post where you're from, Jeff always tells me I need to say where I'm from in a more Southern accent than I use on our live streams. I'm from North Carolina, so I say, hey, y'all, how you doing?
Perfect.
Ben, where are you from?
Originally from Chicago, so do I have to use Chicago? But Northeast Ohio now, Greater Cleveland. So
neutral accent, right?
Pretty neutral, yeah, pretty neutral.
Hi, L. Jurgens, good to see you. Crystal, where are you coming to us tonight?
I am located in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of DC.
Excellent. You're probably having really good weather right now then.
Actually, no, it's raining.
Oh.
But actually, it's not bad. It's not bad. I actually enjoy the rain, but it's not sunny. So there's that.
I like my fall to definitely be springing. Sunny. My fall to be sunny. See, we have Lynn from New Jersey. And Jeff, where are you tonight? Are you in Boston tonight?
I'm outside of Boston. Our headquarters are in Boston.
Excellent.
I'm at home tonight in Norwood, Mass.
Okay, got it. And we've got Mike here. Hi, Mike. Hello from everyone at the Iocdf. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hi, Dottie. All right, we've got people kind of coming in slowly here, so we won't get started formally for another minute or so, and then we will do introductions. For those of you that are here, this is actually live, but we also record, so you'll be able to see it afterwards on our Facebook page and on YouTube, and we'll post those links a little bit later. All right, great. DC. Hi, Steph. Hi, Stephanie.
Stephanie, thank you. You were involved in the outreach around the Psychology Today post that wasn't great. So thank you for helping us with that PR. Someone, just in case people didn't know, there was a guy with an MBA in business trying to say how OCD is helpful in business and being a productive person in business and finance. And so Stephanie saw it this morning and was already tweeting, and we got in the pile, and then they took the post down, which was excellent.
That's amazing.
That's good.
It was nice when you did.
Awesome.
Thank you, Stephanie. I see we've got Kim from Jacksonville, Florida.
And we got Mansfield, Ohio, I see.
There you go.
Not too far from me.
Yeah, Ben, you're in or outside of Cleveland?
I'm outside, Greater Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah, between Cleveland and Akron. So.
Well, look, why don't we use that as a segue to, so I'm Jeff Shamanski. I'm the executive director of the Iocdf, and we wanted to do a state of the Iocdf so that people have a sense of what we're up to and where we're going. We've invited Ben Gambrell to be our moderator today, and you'll understand a little bit more about that as we go along, but I'm going to pass this over to Ben.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. I'm really honored to be here with you all this evening. It's a great opportunity for me to help hopefully facilitate a good discussion. So I'll start with a quick introduction of myself. I'm Ben Gambrell. I'm based, as we were saying earlier, just outside of Cleveland, and I'm a parent of a teenage daughter with OCD who's been struggling with OCD since she was 5 or 6 years old. And so that's really what brought me into the community. And my wife and I are very active. My wife actually wrote a children's book to hopefully help bring more awareness to some of the challenges. But in my day job, I work for a large public company and lead strategy development and execution, and had an opportunity to help contribute in some ways to the IOCDF's efforts to rethink and redevelop their strategy. And I think we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. So I'm going to toss this over to you, Susan, as kind of introduce yourself next.
Okay, awesome. I'm Susan Boaz, and I'm currently the president of the board of directors. I've sat on the board for a little over 10 years now, and I absolutely love it. We're a volunteer board, and we have the opportunity to get very involved in the organization and have a great partnership with Jeff and the entire staff. So all of us on the board really enjoy that role and are honored by it. I also have a daughter, Megan. She actually is on a lot of different IOCDF panels. So many of you have met her. She's 21 now. She got severe sudden onset OCD when she was 3. It was a very unexpected event in our life. And so she actually got diagnosed with both OCD and also PANDAS and PANS as she got a little bit older based on her autoimmune conditions. But she's doing quite well now and is in college. And really, we've been through all of the different ages and stages up until young adulthood, and enjoy is probably the wrong word, but we like talking about it. We like sharing. She really enjoys working with kids and teens, and I really like working with parents and caregivers to talk about how they can help their kids. So that's a little bit about myself. I'll toss it over to Jeff as the other half of the partnership.
Hi, so yes, Jeff Shamanski, originally trained as a clinical psychologist, ended up in the OCD community in 2001, working at the OCD Institute at McLean Hospital, a residential facility for people with OCD. Did that for 7 years. And then the IOCDF kind of did a makeover back in 2007, 2008, and that's when I got involved with the foundation. So I'm celebrating my 14th year this week. Crystal.
Wonderful.
14 years. That's about a little bit younger than my daughter, like a year younger than my daughter. Long time. My name is Crystal Fullwood. I'm a consultant at Blue Beyond Consulting. I had the incredible honor, along with my team, who I'll mention shortly, to support IOCDF in their efforts to create their mission statement and also their vision statement. I have a strong background in employee experiences, well-being, mental health, and trauma-informed practices. At Blue Beyond, just to give you a quick intro to the company, we help build organizations where both the people and the businesses thrive. In my role there, I have the opportunity to blend my skills with our clients, to co-create with our clients. Prior to joining Blue Beyond, I worked as a top-rated mental health first aid instructor for the National Council of Mental Wellbeing out here in DC, where I led mental health at work trainings for senior leaderships, and really with the intention to create a culture of compassion, to end the stigma on mental health and create more awareness. So I was thrilled to be a part of this project with IOCDF. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation tonight.
Great. Well, welcome. I've had the pleasure of working with Blue Beyond in my professional capacity as well, and it's an incredible company, and you guys bring a lot to the table. So in private and now in this setting as well, absolutely. So, well, so there's been some, a lot of activity lately with the big conference. Jeff, just to kick things off before we kind of dive into the meat of the subject, just hope maybe you could spend a few minutes giving people your perspective on how things went at the conference.
Yeah, I mean, it was so interesting because when COVID hit and we did shut down, I told my staff, I was like, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then people kept on emailing me and texting me and saying, are we still doing a live conference in Seattle? This was in 2020. And I was like, of course we are. And then I was saying to the staff, of course we are. And by the way, we need to figure out how to do this virtual, which they did an amazing job, as many of you know. And then 2021 came around and we're still not in person, and 2022 we're in Denver, and it was actually fantastic. We had 1,500 people that want and need for that connection, and that community was really amazing. We're super looking forward to being in San Francisco next year, but at the same time, what we learned in COVID is you can do things in person, you can do things virtually. So now we have a Hoarding disorder conference. We have an online conference for kids and parents. We have an online conference for OCD, all in Spanish, that just happened this past weekend. And then we have our upcoming online OCD conference in November. So a lot still going on.
And faith
Absolutely.
Online conference too. For those of you that have faith-based concerns, we have a
OCD conference as well.
It's incredibly well attended. It has faith providers as well as people that want to learn more about it, and we might be training folks on it. It's a very exciting conference as well.
Totally.
Yeah, really reflecting on the last couple of years, it's were certainly some challenges, but it taught us we could do some things in new and different ways. So, and I think that's a good reflection, kind of looking back and thinking about where we've come to. So I kind of want to move our discussion into what Crystal talked a little bit about mission, vision, and how that might lead into some strategy. And wanted to, hand it back to you, Jeff, just to talk to us a little bit about, kind of what the Iocdf has been working on lately, because I know firsthand that there's a lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah, so I was mentioning I'm 14 years in. When I came on, the foundation had kind of reinvented itself. So we spent really the first few years building infrastructure, building programming. In 2019, we were hitting a place of we really want to be more strategic. We had really thought of ourselves as kind of the only game in town for many years, and there are not now a lot of people in the space doing really important stuff, and we're thinking about being more around how do we partner with folks rather than being everything to everyone. And so in 2019, end of 2019, we did strategic planning. And then in 2020, we're like, oh, okay, we just have to do everything different. And so we just did everything different. And then in 2021, Susan and I were like, all right, we just threw everything at the wall. We need to come back and really be strategic about what we're doing. And so, what was interesting about that is that the foundation has always been a little reactive. It's always been a little like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we build a program because we hear about what's going on. What was interesting is in 2021, end of 2021, as we were talking about strategic planning, Ben happened to be in town in Boston, came into the office and said, I want to learn more about the organization. I'm a donor. I have an interest in the organization. And I'm giving him my pitch about the foundation. At the end of it, he says, what kind of strategic planning are you doing? And I'm like, ooh, Ben, happy that you asked that. We're really looking into it. And he said, well, I'm a strategic planner. And I said, well, we can really use that help of getting that 35,000 foot view and going back to what's really impactful in what we're doing. And so from the strategic planning process, three things kind of came out to me. One is that the strength of the foundation from its inception is that we have four audiences: lived experience, parents and families, therapists, and researchers. And in certain ways, we've been more successful and less successful in addressing those audiences, but it's bi-directional, I think, is the strength, where people are communicating to us and we're communicating back to them. And so we want to build on that strength. I think the other thing that came to the fore is that from very early on, kind of a tagline of the foundation is effective treatment for everyone. So what we've now kind of moved to is effective treatment for everyone as quickly as possible, and support for those affected by OCD, meaning families and parents and friends and supporters. And then I think the third piece that's really come to the fore is this want from the community to get engaged. We've been a very we will help and we will support you. And what we really heard, and Crystal will talk more about this, is this want from our community to really participate and get engaged.
Yeah, and I remember the meeting well, Jeff, and I appreciate your openness to some outside help in the process. And I think one of the things that struck me was just so much passion in your organization to do good, but sometimes that passion led to doing too many things, maybe not well enough. And so I think in our discussions, right, really understanding and crystallizing what's the mission and vision of the organization, so that you could line that strategy up behind that. And it's been interesting to go through that process. Susan, I'd love your perspective, from where you sit on, kind of what got us into this process and how things are shaping up.
It's funny, I think from a lot of areas of the organization, Ben, your question of, hey, what are you doing for strategic planning was so well timed, because a lot of us were asking the question of, why do we exist? Where do we put the majority of our focus? What is needed from us in the community? And so the question was asked of a few of us, like, if you were to explain why we exist, what would it be? And the very simplistic answer back was, well, we exist so that anyone that starts having symptoms is immediately diagnosed and receives effective treatment. That's it. That's why we're here. And when we sort of tested that statement out with researchers, for example, or with parents, everyone resonated with it. And so it was a really exciting start to thinking about strategic planning, of just simply asking the question of why do you exist. And that's really why we brought Crystal in, was to ensure that we were really testing a version of that statement out with tons of different groups. I saw a question a moment ago about spouses and partners, and that's definitely been a huge question that's been just rising up over the last year. And so how do you answer the question of whether we provide more resources for spouses and partners? And we were like, we got to get back to the question of why we exist. And then if the answer to why we exist includes spouses and partners, then we absolutely have to figure out what we're doing for those family members. So it's been and the answer is yes, by the way, just so you're, when you're thinking about that, the answer is yes. And we're working on that. But that was a very exciting process to get to listen to the community over and over and hear whether that resonated with everyone, or if there was something else everyone was really looking for us to do.
Yeah, I think that point of engagement in order to get alignment and understand really what the full community really wants out of this organization, I think is part of the reason we engaged Blue Beyond to do that formally, to really take a process that's applied maybe in some of the private company settings and maybe other organizations, and bring that formalized process in. And so Crystal helped lead us through that, and I would love to toss things over to you, Crystal, to just talk to us a little bit about, how you reached out to engage the community, what that process was like, and maybe a little bit of, behind the curtain for the group here on how we did that.
Yes, of course. So I represent one of the 3 consultants that worked on this project. Included in the Blue Beyond team was Whitney Grabowski, and also Madeline Tim and myself. So it was essential to the strategic project process of IOCDF to hear from the community. After you all realized what that strategy was, you wanted to see if it was the right direction, if it would resonate with your audiences, because as you mentioned, Jeff, you have various ones. So over the course of 6 weeks, we conducted 5 one-on-one interviews. We held 10 stakeholder focus groups, and that included people with lived experience, the board of directors, clinicians, employees, your global partners, affiliates, parents, and also the scientific and advisory board as well was along with us. We heard from 63 voices during that process, and we reviewed the feedback that we received to identify themes across. And after we synchronized that data, we presented it to IOCDF, the findings and also the recommendations. We presented to the board of directors and also to the IOCDF employees. One of the things that resonated the most was community. The impact. It really didn't matter who we spoke to. It was the common theme across. IOCDF was looked at as an industry leader, and also a place where people can come to find a sense of belonging. So that's a lot of that's the common theme that we heard across, or
Wonderful.
one of, or 2 of the common themes that we heard across.
Yeah, great. Yeah, community was definitely resonated across the different stakeholder groups about how it's being part of something bigger. Just, given that you work with different organizations, Crystal, how would you contrast that? Or, is that similar to other groups, or how would you say the IOCDF stakeholder groups compared to maybe some others you work with?
Yeah, so at Blue Beyond, we have the honor of working with organizations across various industries. We have the honor of co-creating incredible places to work, along with impactful and resonating mission and vision statements. And we don't take that service lightly, and recognize the trust that it takes an organization to invite us along the journey. So when we were extended the opportunity to work with IOCDF, I don't think we recognized initially the impact that it would have on us, both professionally and personally. Initially, we were attracted to the purpose. Mental health awareness and well-being are areas of life that we value, and we understand the importance of it. But as we spoke with your community, from the clinicians to the ones receiving care, there was an undeniable sense that you were all in this together, that all the stakeholders believed in community care, that all the stakeholders wanted to ensure that no one suffers alone. And that's the beauty of IOCDF. You are all intentional about creating a world where people feel seen and that they belong. And Blue Beyond is doing the same work. And so it was just a perfect fit.
Great. Good. Well, I'm interested, and I recognize that we're getting some comments and some questions in the chat, which I appreciate, and we'll try to get to those later on in this engagement. And if we can't get to everything, we'll make sure we capture the questions and input for feedback later. Jeff, I'd love some of your reflections and learnings along the way, because I know that when we first started getting into that, was one of the questions we all asked ourselves is, hey, this is going to take some time and some resources to go do this, and will it be worth the time and resources? But I'd love some input from you on what your reflections and learnings were through the process.
Yeah, a couple things stood out. One was, part of why I left direct care. I did direct care for about 15 years, and half of that was working with people with OCD. And the reason I took over the foundation was because I recognized all the obstacles for this community in terms of access to care, support, misinformation, all these kinds of things. And so, when I took over, we've been so consumed with we're credible, we're competent, we know what we're doing, we have your back, don't worry about it. And in this process, what we heard from our stakeholder groups is they're like, yeah, no, you know what you're doing. We trust you. We know you have our back. We want to get engaged. We want to be involved. We want to be part of the process. Now, so again, part of that kind of reflection of 14 years ago. So the first conference that I was involved in as part of the IOCDF, I looked back and they had about 120 talks. And at that time, the majority were given by researchers and therapists. Out of probably 200 presenters, there were about 10 people with OCD with lived experience and parents that were telling their story. We now have 600 proposals every year. We have hundreds of people. We have a huge advocate program. People want to talk. People want to get engaged. People want to be part of the process. And so they want to know, not that we know what we're doing. They know we know what we're doing. They want to get engaged. They want community. Yeah. They want the thing I hear, and I'll talk more about this later. We're going to start a parent and family academy, and this is really born out of this sense of not only from a lived experience, but from the supporter and of my journey was hard, and it shouldn't be that hard. If I had kidney stones, I'd call an ambulance. I go to the hospital and they treat me. If I have OCD, it's 10 years. What do you mean it takes 10 years to get treatment? That's crazy. So what I'm hearing from our community is I don't want people to go through the journey I went through, and we're hearing that loud and clear. And so we're building all of these plugins to the organization to expand our reach by widening the tent.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That there's just a feeling within this community that people want to help others. It is a terribly challenging thing to go through, and whether you're suffering or you're a loved one of a sufferer, it's really challenging. And certainly heard that come through loud and clear, that there's people that want to step in, engage, and help. So, Susan, what about you? What any reflections on process and things that you learned or surprises?
Yeah, it's when I joined the IOCDF in 2006, I think our thought process around who we were and what we were trying to build was more around giving information that was accurate. And what was interesting about that, it was in a lot of ways the information was sort of straight line, no matter who you were and how you were experiencing all the facets of OCD. And as we grew, I certainly walked in saying, hey, it's really different to have a child with OCD than it is to experience OCD. And so what are we doing? And it's really different to treat a child with OCD, a 3-year-old versus a 16-year-old or a 32-year-old.
Mhm.
And so I walked in with the same perspective that I'm now finding in the community for lots of different areas. And so it's just kind of reiterated something, which is that OCD has so many facets and so many faces, and it affects so many people in the family in different ways. And yes, the information at the core is pretty much the same, but how it's translated or how you might implement that in your individual family or situation can be very different. If you are personally on the spectrum and experiencing OCD, you might want to have community that can understand that particular experience and what challenges it might have. If you're in relationship with someone that has OCD, you might want to have other folks that are having that experience versus that of a parent of a 5-year-old. That's what I heard over and over, is that sense of belonging really boiled down to how were you treating this particular area of OCD that you were looking at? How were you interacting with someone with OCD, or as someone with OCD, were you interacting? How did you get care? Like, it was really the same question I had when I was looking at my daughter, 20 some, 18 years ago now, was how do I get care today? And I remember doctors saying, I should probably grow out of it. And I was like, at what particular age? Like in 2 days, or like, are we talking a couple of months here? Because if it's a couple of months, we don't say you're going to grow out of diabetes, right? We identify it and we give treatment for it. And so I think what's been exciting for me in going through this process was the reinforcement of 2 things. One, OCD impacts different interest groups in different ways, and that has to be addressed. And 2, getting care for whoever you love or for yourself as fast as possible is key to having a successful and happy life. And that's what matters to folks. And that's where we have to put our energy as we look forward for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, so we talked a bit about the process we've gone through. Jeff, do you mind kind of where does all this lead? We're sort of a few. Can you kind of speak to the mission and vision, where we landed and what that is, and maybe a bit about where we go from here?
Yeah. So from the stakeholder groups, really hearing from all different audiences. Crystal, you got 90% of them. Someone said spouses weren't heard from. Spouses were definitely heard from. Siblings were heard from. We really, in the way that Susan just got done saying, we want to hear from all aspects of our community. It's a very robust community, and it's very complicated because we can get pulled in so many different directions, but we're also recognizing our strength is in the diversity of our community. And so where we landed was with an impact statement. And the impact statement is a combination of our mission statement and our vision statement and kind of what we do. So here's what we came up with. The mission of the Iocdf is to ensure that no one affected by OCD and related disorders suffers alone. Our community provides help, healing, and hope. Our vision is that everyone impacted by OCD and related disorders has immediate access to effective treatment and support. The Iocdf provides up-to-date education and resources, strengthens community engagement, delivers quality professional training, and advances groundbreaking research. Our goal in crafting this wasn't just an intellectual exercise. Our goal in crafting this was really to think about, when we think about what we're doing, and someone was posting, are you out in medical communities, right? We need to be thinking about strategically, how are we out in medical communities? So we have a perinatal task force, perinatal OCD task force. Where are people experiencing OCD? Kids experiencing OCD. They're experiencing them in schools. And so we have the Anxiety in the Classroom project. And so going forward, we're going to use this as our lens to think about, what are we going to prioritize as an organization, and where are we going to partner? There might be other organizations that can do things better than we can do. For example, education about telehealth and teletherapy might be better done by NoCD than by us, because that's the part of the picture that they hold. So we really thought long and hard, and this was several months of kind of thinking this through, and again, input from lots of different folks. And where we started and where we ended was dramatically different. And that was, keeping our ears open and staying flexible and hearing input from everyone.
Yeah, I can remember first time I heard draft the statement, and I got a little emotional, and hopefully I get emotional right now. But for me, the point about just that no one should have to suffer alone. And I know from my own experience and experience of my family, that's the hardest part, is when you just feel like that you're the only one. And so having a mission centered around building community so that no one has to have that feeling was really powerful to me. And Jeff, I think your point about this is a lens that will be applied. And I think anytime this organization is thinking about, should we do this or should we do that, it'll be with the idea in mind of, hey, is this going to help us reach that vision, that future vision, right? Of everyone being able to receive immediate and effective care. So I think it's wonderful having that perspective. Krista, maybe talk to us a little bit about, mission vision statements, are intended to provide some things, and talk to us a little bit about why organizations do that and how you think that'll help. How do you think that'll help the IOCDF as they move forward?
Yeah, so we at Blue Beyond, we believe that in creating high-performing organizations starts with knowing what you stand for and what good you seek to create in the world. And so the mission is why an organization exists, who they serve, why they do what they do. It helps people stay focused on whatever that goal is. It's the roadmap. The vision is where an organization is going, that long-term ambition, the big picture. I read recently something that stuck out to me about a vision. It said, the vision is not only where the organization wants to be in the world, but where they want the world to be because of them. And when I think about the impact of IOCDF, Ben, you shared your story, but man, the stories of the community, people speaking about how they felt when they walked into a conference and recognize, wait, I'm not in this by myself. There are communities of people that I can connect with that can possibly go along this journey with me, right? It's where the world would be because of IOCDF. That's the vision. And so both are necessary to create alignment, to grow appreciation, and to also build momentum. And that's to impact the world, your clients, employees, and just various stakeholders. It's necessary to focus because, as you said, you can't be everything to everybody, but you can be impactful to one. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think having the courage and maybe a little confidence around really being able to change things, it's powerful. And I think that's sort of the future state vision, is this organization sees an opportunity to really make a meaningful, impactful difference on the world in this area. So Jeff, talk to us a little bit about, so where do you plan to take the organization next? Where are we headed, and how does this vision statement kind of help with that?
Yeah, it's so funny because I was an individual therapist for the first half of my career, and they always say, isn't it hard to deal with people's problems and not take them home? And I actually didn't. I actually was very good about that. There's something very funny about when I moved into this position, where my sense of responsibility really shifted, and I really did feel like if things were going to happen, I had to make them happen. And that's been my evolution in the last 14 years is, yes, I need to be a good leader, and yes, I need to direct things. But if I'm trying to do it all by myself, we aren't going to get very far. And so this idea of like increasing the tent, increasing the opportunity for people to participate in how this is going to transform. I think that's the most important thing. So the way we're really thinking of our strategic planning, we keep coming back to there's something really special if you've ever had a chance to come to a conference or a walk or any other community event, that there's something really, there's an investment in lived experience, parent and family voices, therapist experience, research experience, bi-directional, where we're talking to, we're learning, and we're giving back, that I keep on coming back to how valuable and how important that is. And we're really looking at how well we've done with each of those audiences. And I think that's where our strength is. That's where we need to go. I think one of the communities that we've let down, I think, really is the parents and families. And what I mean by that is, even again, as a therapist, I would always be like, so again, in Western culture, I was just doing it. We're doing an international panel on our OCD online conference. And we're working with people from China and Singapore and Mexico. And we were talking about how well does this model that we've taught you guys, how well does that model work in your culture? And all of them talked about, you guys don't talk enough about families. And you don't talk enough about how this invades the family system. And I've always seen parents and families as our allies in the helping people with lived experience, and not really recognize that they had their own needs, and they had their own struggles, and they had their own loneliness, and they had their own isolation. And so we're going to call it the Parent and Family Academy. And it's really going to be about both training parents and families about how to support their loved ones, but also how to get the support and tools they need to take care of themselves. So that's a big kind of forward leaning place that we're going. But you're really going to see this emphasis on these 4 audiences, and this, again, openness to engagement and people really contributing. I think a great example, and then I'll shut up, we all know I talk too long, is Katie O'Dunn joined our group and came in as this kind of whirlwind, and as an interfaith chaplain, as someone with OCD, became one of our lead advocates, and really started this Faith and OCD initiative, also inspired by Kim Vicente, who's on this stream. But again, it's about finding that passion and that want and willingness to be invested and put the time in and make us bigger by contributing their own time and energy. And so I think it's been just an amazing initiative, and kind of thinking about that as a template for how to just get bigger and bigger, so that we can impact more and more, so that people we still heard 50% of people that came to the conference this year, why didn't you come to the conference before? And they're like, I never heard of you. I hate hearing that answer.
Yeah, Susan. Susan, I want to get a couple reactions from you, and then I want to open up, look in the chat to see if there's any questions that we can answer from anyone. So any reflections from you?
Yeah, we were at the conference, and I usually work in the elementary or the middle school rooms, but we had a gap in coverage for about the last hour of the conference, and I got thrown into the teen room. Those of you that don't work with teens out there might imagine the sheer terror of that situation, where they were like, hey, go take care of the teen room. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's like being thrown in as substitute teacher in high school. And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. So I kind of walked in with like an awareness that there might be skepticism or whatever in the room. And instead genuinely found like the most lovely group of young people ever. Like, just such open, honest conversations were happening in that room. And so as we were talking, I said, what did you get the most out of at the conference, and what were you the most grateful for? And what they overwhelmingly said that they got the most out of is that they learned they weren't alone. Or as one lovely young person said to me, a young woman, she said, I thought I was a freak, and I'm not. There are other people just like me. And I was like, oh, like, I just hate that you thought that for like 1 minute. And how do we make sure no one thinks that way? And we had been having conversations about intrusive thoughts, and so many people don't even know what intrusive thoughts are, and never mind how to deal with it. Like, half of the battle is just learning what it is. So she just really like reinforced for me in that moment how critical it was that our outreach get to as many people as possible. And then I said, well, what do you guys wish we would do more of, or where could we do better for you here at the conference? And again, one theme constant was, you spent an hour with us, or an hour and a half, with the parents and the kids in the same room, really trying to help the parents understand what we are going through. How is my mind working, and why is it different? Why can't I just stop without good therapy? And they were like, we're so grateful for that. That was the best part of the whole thing. And I was like, okay, like, great, this really ties into what we've been talking about anyway, and where Crystal had really led us through all these focus groups, is that their family members need to understand better how to help and how to help effectively. And that statement made me smile, because I think it was 5 years ago, a young teen took me to task once again by saying, you don't have any sibling content. And I saw some folks here in the chat saying, you don't have enough content for spouses and partners. And you're right. Like, that's an area we are definitely have already moved into, but want to expand in, because how do you understand what's happening? How do you help? And also, how do you deal with it and get your own support? All of that just continues to be reinforced no matter what age group or group of people we work with. And I hope you can hear it in our voices. We're passionate and excited about it, and we're all aligned. That continuing to provide that kind of content and going deeper into community is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's built right into the mission, vision, impact statement, right?
And I was going to ask Ben, could Jeff just say the vision? Sometimes I'm a written learner. I can't hear anything. If you talk in anything longer than a short sentence, I'm like, what did you just say? I can't. I stopped listening. So Jeff, would you just say the vision part again, just so I can make sure everyone that learns like me heard?
I will do that, and then I'll figure out a way. I still can't figure out. I'll get it to Skyla, and we'll get it posted in the
Awesome.
the comment section. But so, and I want to build on something that Stephanie just asked in the chat. Our vision is that everyone impacted by OCD and related disorders has immediate access to effective treatment and support. It's important that we put support in there, because effective treatment is for lived experience and support is for the supporters. And that was very important to make sure that we were talking to our whole community. Now, that vision statement also speaks to our researcher and therapist community. And so, Stephanie, one of the things that we're doing, we've just shifted because of this vision statement. We have created a new position at the foundation that we're looking for people to apply to, which is a training manager. And so this training manager is going to work with myself and Stephanie Kogan, our program director, to expand our training institute. This is going to increase the number of opportunities to learn. So we're thinking of it as kind of, I'm a novice to I'm an expert, and I can get off the train at any point. But I really want to deepen my skill as a therapist. That is going to be a core. So we're going to pull away from some things to really focus on that if we're going to succeed in our vision. There aren't enough people that treat OCD. I hear from every single day. I hear across the country people cannot find enough OCD providers, even though there are, I'm not exaggerating, 5,000% more OCD providers than there were 10 years ago. It has just exponentially grown. The number of people with OCD has not grown. So it was terrifying 10 years ago. Susan looking for treatment for her kid, it was awful because there weren't anyone, there were very few people out there. So a core of what we're trying to do is to increase the number of people who know what they're doing, that aren't doing celery juice, aren't doing talk therapy, aren't keeping it. Again, this is why I left doing direct care. The number of people, I would sit in a group, I would say, how many years have you had OCD? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, all the hands that would go up. How many years have you been in treatment? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, all hands would go up. We got people better because we knew what we were doing. Why are you doing 20 years of therapy that doesn't get you better? And the way that Susan says, what do you mean it takes 10 years to get effective treatment? If my kid got OCD at 8, she's 18 before she's getting effective treatment. She lost her whole adolescence. That's not okay. Yeah. So that has to be what we focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Susan, for prompting us to revisit that. I think dropping that in the chat is a great idea. It's tough to absorb. Hey, I want to, speaking of the chat, I'm going to jump in and just pull a few things I'm seeing, comments and questions out. So I see something from Grace about whether there's a link regarding the 1,000,000 steps for the OCD walk. I'm not sure about that. Maybe someone can drop in, but I did have to comment that I did my first one in Akron this past year, and it was fantastic. And so hopefully Skyla maybe can provide a link in the chat there about how to find out where the local ones are. But it's a really great way to get involved and meet people in the community. I know from firsthand experience.
Yeah, and if you pop into our affiliates, Iocdf affiliates, you can reach out to your local affiliate as well to see if they're doing a walk in your local area as well. So
there it is, right there on the screen. I see now. iocdf.org/walk. Perfect.
excellent.
Awesome. So Stephanie commented, love to see BTTI expanded as part of the mission to increase access to care. And I was excited to be part of bringing the BTTI to the greater Cleveland area. And I know from sitting in on that, it was a really outstanding service that the IOCD provides. But maybe for Jeff or Susan, if maybe any comments on BTTI and kind of how you guys are thinking about that and whether we might see more expansion of that over time to help us, kind of achieve the mission vision.
I'm going to let Jeff talk mostly this. He talked a little bit about how we're already trying to do it from sort of like the entry level all the way through expert. We're trying to do it both in-person trainings and also online. But Jeff, I didn't know if you want to talk about maybe all the different types of BTTIs we have as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So in 1995, this is a while ago now, again, this has been a core issue for the foundation since its inception. And so they asked a group of our scientific advisory board members, they said, look, there aren't enough providers. What do we do? And they said, let's do a training. And from that became this 3-day training for professionals. It's 30 people at a time. There's been a push to make it bigger. And we're like, nope, it's only 3 days, guys. We got to really make sure that we focus on getting people as well trained as possible. And even then, after the 3 days, we're recognizing that people still need more training. So we developed a webinar series. We've developed an advanced forum series. We've developed an online consultation series. But the BTTIs, when I took over, they were doing 1 or 2 a year. So that was 60 people. And I was like, but they're really expensive to run also if we're going to do them really well. So this was one of those, we call them, it's a mission driven, meaning that we would lose money on it. That's where donors came into play of like, we're making sure that people are getting trained, but it's expensive to do. It's time consuming, but we want high quality trainings. We need your help with this. And so it went from 3 and we're doing 11 this year. So we did one that was, we have our general, kind of the traditional BTTI. About 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing one that was specific to treating pediatric OCD. And then this past year, we did one where we were asking providers who were people of color, who were primarily treating communities of color, and we did a BTTI just for that community. And then in a couple months, in November, we're doing a BTTI for therapists who are primarily Spanish speaking, bilingual, but again, it's easier to learn in your native language. And so we're going to do a BTTI fully in Spanish. So we're doing 11 this year, and we're committed to doing that again next year. But again, they're very time intensive. We actually have about 4,000 people on a wait list. So there's a huge need for this. And so even if we can train, 300-400 people a year, there's just a large backlog. This is one of those things where we start to talk about, like, do we need a strategic partner to help us do this? Or do we just need to get bigger in order to do 50 BTTIs a year? We might need to do that. But we don't want to rush the training. We don't want it to be kind of halfway done just so we get through that wait list. We really want the quality of the training to be high.
Good. I appreciate the extra color there, Devin. I think you're right. The quality's got to stay high, but I think that the challenge is how do we go bigger, right? And how do we impact more people, right? And that, I think, is really imperative in order to reach that future vision, right? So that everyone can get access. You've got to build more capacity, and BTTI helps to bring that capacity on board for people who are qualified to do treatment. So.
Yep.
So someone asked what the name of my wife's book was, and that's Practice Being Brave. And she wrote that. My wife is a math teacher, never authored a book or even thought about that in her entire life. But when we were struggling to find resources when our child was very young, we had a hard time finding illustrated books. So we were able to self-publish an illustrated book about our own experience with the hope of maybe bringing some other folks a little bit sense of comfort and community, and as they maybe saw themselves a little bit in our experience. So good. So I'm looking through the questions and comments. I don't think I see. Thank you for some good comments, Tiffany, and others who posted things there. I had a couple other questions for the group. Specifically, one I wanted to ask about was, is we talk so much about community involvement in the process of developing the mission vision, and I just was interested in, as we go forward, what are your thoughts for keeping folks involved in the community and in building the strategy and executing the strategy? Jeff, do you mind giving us some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and to respond to Tiffany, so this was one of the silver linings of COVID, is that it was March, we all went into lockdown. In April, Ethan Smith, our national advocate, called me and said, our community's really struggling. Like, we're all in lockdown and this is all crazy, but we need to reach out. And from that became our virtual programming, of which we have 2 live streams we do every week. That is kind of what you're talking about, Tiffany, is how do you, once you're out of treatment, where's your community? And so Ethan actually runs a community conversations on Tuesday night every other week. And it's just about like, come and talk about what's going on and how are you doing and what, and then we do some Q&As, and then we do town halls that are specific to specific topics. But I think our virtual community is a great way to kind of get involved, participate. We have another virtual community called Health Unlocked. And then we have our advocate program. Our advocate program is people that start out saying, I want to help out in kind of a grassroots way. I want to repost, I want to put stuff on social media. And then over time, they become advocates where they start to do programs for us. So we've turned our OCD Awareness Week over to our advocates. They're going to be doing all of our programming this year, overseen by our lead and national advocates. And so we're building in all these levels of opportunity to engage and participate and share your passion, share your strengths, and share your talents. That just makes us all bigger and stronger and more effective.
Well, based on what Crystal was saying earlier, I don't think you're going to have any shortage of getting people that want to be involved. There seems like there's plenty of energy and people out there looking to contribute. Let's see here. I see there's a question here from Grace in the chat. What gaps in the community advocacy or advocacy community do people recognize as the more prominent ones that regular old Joes like me that don't have a clinical degree? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, and again, it goes back to my reflection about 10 people telling their story, 10, 15 years ago. It's interesting, this kind of circle. One of our newest employees, Liz Lindley, is our external relations manager. She was actually one of our first parent advocates, along with Susan. This was back in 2011 through 2013, 14. And we kept on going to Susan and we kept on going to Liz, and we're like, as parents, we need you to talk and we need you to be out there, because we knew like 2 people were willing to talk about it. Now, if I put out an email, I'd get 100 parents saying, I want to get involved. So our issue isn't that people aren't not wanting to talk. Our issue is about finding ways to plug them in to do that. You can do blogs, you can do newsletter articles, you can participate in your local affiliate. You can get involved as a grassroots advocate and move up the advocate ladder. You can, because we have so many conferences in person and live now, there's so many more opportunities to present at a conference. Info@iocdf.org. If you just want to get involved, you just email Betsy. Betsy will talk with you, and then she'll put you in touch with whoever best serves what you're interested in. We have people that are like, I want to fundraise for you. I want to run a walk in my local community. We have, I think, almost 40 walks running this year. So there are a million ways now to just get involved, and just reach out to us and say, I want to get involved. I want to tell my story. I want to do something local. I want to do something national. And we have 100 different ways to get involved. That's really been the growth in the last 10 years. I think that's what's going to make the organization big and powerful, is engagement.
People used to say, how can I help? And we'd be like,
I'll get back to you.
Right? Like, we'll get back to you. We'll get somebody on that right away. And now, like, I think when someone says, how can I help? We're like, hey, let us tap you in. What is your area? And I love your comment, Grace, that I'm a regular Joe. I often start with, I'm the only person in the room without a PhD, because I'm frequently sitting in front of so many people that do, right? I'm like, I'm just a mom. But like, that doesn't matter in this community, because it doesn't matter like what group of people I sit down and talk with. You know, anytime there are more than 4 people in the room and I just tell a brief part of our story, my daughter's story, family story, where I like spend my volunteer time, one of those 4 people calls me afterwards and says, I or my loved one or someone I know is struggling, and how can I get help? Like, so like literally just 4 people. It's not like you have to always be on a national platform to talk about OCD and make a difference. And I feel like that one person out of the 4 is going to speak to 20 more people that are going to be impacted by this, and that goes forward. So that I think is incredibly important, that it's small ways of speaking, whether it's sharing information on Facebook or telling your story to people that you trust and you're comfortable with. But I think it's so interesting the way you asked the question. It made me think, like, what are the gaps that people are recognizing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could list like 50 gaps that people are recognizing. But 2 of the ones that I'm really excited about right now, that I think everyone is recognizing a gap, is postpartum or perinatal OCD. That doesn't even get talked about. That perinatal postpartum depression gets talked about a lot, but OCD, we don't even know entirely how much of postpartum depression might actually be OCD, and it's usually in women, but not always. It's usually around intrusive thoughts, often about the baby, but not always. That, you know, gosh, wouldn't it be great if every mom during pregnancy, every family during pregnancy learned that this was a normal thing that might happen, and that here's what you would do about it. So that's an exciting area that's not really been tapped into terribly well. We've got a little website up now. We're looking for people to share their stories. And then the second one is families. It's just families. It's what we're hearing, you know, whether it's how to help your loved one at any age. Like, we had a huge group come to us, group of women come to us recently that were like, I am the parent of an adult with OCD. Okay, so I'm the parent of a child with OCD. I have a little bit more control over whether we're going, not tons, but a little bit more control over what's happening, right? What kind of therapy someone's getting, who they're going to. Once you're the parent of an adult, you have lost so much control. And so they wanted to have more conversations around that, and also how to support themselves. We've had Felice, who's speaking here about spouses and partners. So really hearing that family component is so important to us, and figuring out what else we can do for that beyond even having our parent and family university, which will do so much training for folks around that. Similar to how we train therapists, you'll be able to come in and learn about OCD from soup to nuts, A to Z, everything that you could want to talk about. And then how do you access more support so you do feel connected? Those are the 2 areas I'm really excited about.
Well, those are great thoughts, Susan. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think when you were talking just about, you start sharing your story and you just find out how many other people are affected. Just it surprises me constantly, just in the little town I live in, and the number of people we've now know that, are affected in one way or another. There's a lot of people hiding in plain sight. So we're getting real short on time. Crystal, I just want to give you a chance to, if you have anything to close with here, any thoughts?
I'm so inspired. We completed this work a couple of months ago with Iocdf. So hearing all that you have done just gives me goosebumps. And just realizing just the impact that you all are having on the world. I've been saying that since we've had the opportunity to work along with you all. And I'm hopeful. Another comment that stands out to me that I recall right now in this moment is that a person said that I want my great grandkids to not experience what I had to experience if they have a mental health disorder. You are on your way. You are on your way to making that possible for so many people, thousands, hundreds of thousands. And man, doing that work and knowing that you all are doing that work is just lighting me up and giving me so much life. So I'm glad that you chose Blue Beyond to be a part of that story in your journey. And I cannot wait to see what happens in the next 14 years, Jeff, or the next decade or two after that. So thank you so much for allowing us to be here with you all.
Yeah, Crystal, thank you. And thank you for infusing your energy and passion into the process too. You can really comes through. So Jeff, can you want to bring us home here, or we're just a bit over time. So you can get us to the close here.
Yeah, I'm gonna give one shout out that we haven't, someone we haven't talked about, who I think is really the heart of the organization, and from leadership, it shapes a whole community. Mike Janicki has been the chair of the Scientific Advisory Board for over 25 years. I was at a conference, this is probably about 10 years ago, and Mike had finished giving a talk around 9, 10 o'clock in the morning at the conference. And around noon, I went back, I was walking back through the hallway, and I saw him still talking with people outside of the room that he gave his talk on. And around 3 o'clock, I came back, and he was still talking to a line of people. And at 6 o'clock, I went and said, Mike, you need to eat dinner. What are you doing? And he's like, people are suffering, and I need to help. And that huge heart is really the heart of the organization. It inspires us all the time. And so that is where this generosity and this amazing collaboration, I think, comes from. So I just want to give Mike a shout out for, really setting that norm in this organization of we all have a voice. We're all here to help. We all have something to contribute, and we can all help each other.
Great way to close it. Thanks, Jeff. And thank you everyone for spending some time with us this evening. Really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to speak with you all.
Bye, guys.